Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another illustrious episode of the Tea and Crystals podcast. I am T.
And I'm Crystal.
Y'all, we are so glad to have you with us for part three of our documentary series on the Netflix documentary Take Care of Maya. We are on the final part, and y'all, it is just, I don't want to say getting good, but it's a lot in this third part that y'all are gonna want to hear. It is so much deeper than you think it is. But before we go there, Crystal, how are you?
I'm good. I'm ready to let the audience know what this final piece is about and to get
Hmm.
all that information into them. Uh,
Yeah,
so without further ado, we're going to get right back into it, no
come
delaying.
on.
So last episode, we talked about how unfortunately Beata felt like the only way she was going to get her daughter out of the hospital was by taking her own life. And we have since flashed forward to the present time when the documentary is being filmed. So we have been able to uh, hear from Jack saying that, um, he misses Beata and he doesn't understand how she could do all that. We also saw Maya for the first time, and saw how she was doing and everything like that. So we start back up in 2019 with reporter Daphne Chen. She was doing an article on welfare in Sarasota when she came across the Kowalski's family's case. She felt moved by the death of Beata and the complexity surrounding the case that she knew she had to take the story and get it out. She interviewed the Kowalskis for her article, as well as Dr. Sally Smith, the CPS investigator, to get her side of the story. She states that Dr. Smith was very firm with her that she had done nothing wrong. However, Daphne Chen would later find out that Dr. Smith's opinion differed a lot from other doctors, including Maya's care team, Dr. Kirkpatrick and Dr. Hannah. She published her story in January of 2019, thinks she would just move on to the next thing. However, shortly after the story's publication, she began to receive so many calls and emails that made her realize the story was bigger than just the Kowalskis, which I'm beginning to think that after 4 years, some of those doctors who were saying those things in the text messages and in their depositions with their tone of voice might have a different opinion now.
I mean, cause I ain't trying to give them too much, cause they only had what was, excuse me, available to them at the time. But at the same time, it's the callousness for me. It's the way that they spoke about that girl. It's the way that they went about this stuff. It's the way that they really just let that privatized company come up in there and run amok. And we'll get into the hospital's role in all of this because the hospital played a role in the nefariousness of Maya's case.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I ain't gonna do too much because Florida's crazy and they'll come and snatch my ass up in a second. So I'm not gonna do too much. Um, but they was playing a dirty game out there, and Jack gets on my fucking nerves. I'm sorry, he do. Jack get on my nerves. Jack
Mm-hmm.
annoys me. Like, what you mean you don't know what was on her mind? She just went through from the audio and everything that we have seen so far. You left her hanging in a lot of these situations. Like Beata felt like she was by herself. Beata felt like she was crazy. Beata was. I have been avoiding this word. No, I'm not. I'm not gonna say that. But they were playing on Beata's time. They were playing on Beata's time. Beata was. I'm not gonna say aggressive, but she was. She was very assertive in her approach to her daughter's care. which anybody who believes the diagnosis of, a doctor, I don't know. I don't know. I was on Beata's side the whole time. I didn't agree with how she carried it out, but you know, Dr. Smith can go to hell. Ooh, did I say that? We shouldn't get canceled. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that, well, I mostly agree. I still have a little bit more sympathy for Jack than I think you do. But in terms of Beata, I even the way she handled things, I truly believe that in a different hospital with a different set of doctors, this might have turned out completely different if they had just taken her seriously. So I think again, it all stems back to these doctors just feeling butthurt that this woman came in and decided to tell them what to do, basically. But what's done is done. So it's at this point in the documentary we start to hear snippets from other families about their experiences dealing with All Children's Hospital, with Dr. Sally Smith and with the judicial system. And neither one of the stories are fully explored, so they're just little bits of information. So the first person, Vivian Graham, says she had read the article in Sarasota Herald Tribune. She realized it was so much bigger than what she and her family had been through about their own situation. She said her son was having a seizure, that his eyes were rolling and he was shaking, so she had called 911. She said they found old and new brain bleeds, and that when she met Sally Smith, she states Dr. Smith saw them for less than 10 minutes, and then her and her husband was arrested for aggravated child abuse. Ashley Finnegan says she didn't realize that so many others were going through what she was going through. She said her and her family instantly called 911 and that they did what they were taught to do. She said they ended up arrested and in prison. Her children were in foster care. John Stewart said he just couldn't believe after hearing the story. He said his son wasn't breathing, barely had a pulse, so he called 911. He said they found broken ribs, a brain bleed. Carly Brian said her daughter started throwing up, and when she started to get little bruises, so she rushed her off to the hospital. She was then asked, "What do you mean she has this?" She says, I brought her in for bruises," which I'm assuming was the brain bleeds. I'm wondering if this was a common thing between everyone. The reporter Daphne Chen said she started to hear from more and more families who had taken their kids to doctors for help, and they became the target of the system. She said they were desperate and frantic, and one thing they all had in common was Dr. Sally Smith and Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. She states these families walked in looking for help for their child, and some of them ended up in handcuffs. During an interview for parents.com, Dr. Smith states that she does almost all of the evaluations for children who are admitted to All Children's Hospital for the last 30 years. She says, she is very reasonable, generally compassionate, caring person, and that she doesn't set out each day to tear families apart. So Maya says the way they spoke about her mom at the hospital was pretty messed up. A text is then shown from a doctor saying, "FYI, we were able to move her to a video room last night. Apparently, she's currently sitting in bed with legs crossed and has a laptop or something propped on her lap." Sally Smith replies, "We may need to try and monitor what she is doing online. I wouldn't put anything past her mother." Maya said they would try and convince her that her mom was doing things to her, that she was making her CRPS up. She said at first she was confused, and then she was angry at the hospital for basically keeping her captive from her family, friends, and school. She was also frustrated but kept it in because her parents taught her to be respectful and kind. Jack said they tried to cooperate, but nothing gets done by silence, and that they want to hold Johns Hopkins responsible for what they have done and justice for Beata. Beata is here.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to. I have to. I have to. Jack, you really, you really picked this time after Beata is gone to not be silent. I. This is why I let you have your compassion for Jack, and I don't. And I don't. Because Jack, where was all of this? Where was this fire? Where was this fever when Beata was here, because you know what, Jack, I'm not gonna do too much on you because you are now a single father. Your wife, is no longer with us. It was a traumatic situation. So, Jack, I ain't gonna do too much on you, but just know, Jack, I'm pulling your number and I'm calling your card. Cause I can't get behind this rowdiness now that Beata is gone, because Beata needed this rowdiness when she was still here.
While I agree with you that Beata definitely needed this rowdiness and she needed that support, I think for some people it takes those extreme things, those incidents in their lives to get them to fight. And not everybody is going to have it right off the bat like Beata. And unfortunately for someone like Jack, it took losing his wife for him to realize he had just been sitting back this whole time and that he couldn't do that.
What is more extreme than your child being held captive for 3 months in a hospital, and you're going to court every few months behind this child, trying to get this child? Like, where do you not like snap out of it and you're like, oh my God, like I need to do something here? I don't know what role he played, but I would assume that he would have more input in the documentary than Beata, because Beata isn't here anymore. So you would think that, if there was a perspective of his to share in which he played more of a pivotal role in the conversations that happened between the family and the hospital and trying to get, Maya out of there. I would have liked to have seen it. But the only
Well,
thing they showed us was, Beata's point of view, and them him telling Beata to stop.
yeah, but also, when you have that person in who's taking that charge, because like you said, even early on when Maya is first trying to get diagnosed, you only ever see her with Beata. You don't see Jack around or anything like that. And I think because Beata was a nurse and she knew how to speak to doctors, what they were talking about when they were saying certain things. I think he just deferred to her, like you said, and he just took the back seat. And so when everything blew up, I think he just continued to do that because Beata was such a fighter, such a strong spirit that he didn't have to be that strong spirit because she was doing all that work. It's and then now that she's here, now he's finding that he has to do it. While I agree he needed to have been doing this from the start, sometimes in those relationships, those yin and yang type relationships, when one person has a strong personality and someone doesn't, that person who does it just sits back while everything is happening because they're doing all the work.
But imagine, Crystal, imagine, because you can. It's a situation where something has happened, a wrong has happened, and you are being painted as the villain, and you know that that's not the case. You know that what you're saying is right. You know that what you're saying is true. And people are like, she's fighting for it. She has it.
Mhm.
She's strong. She can do it, and nobody helps you.
Mhm.
Nobody, no, like, can you eat,
I
girl?
I agree with you.
Can you imagine being in a marriage like that and you're fighting for your child, and the person that you are supposed to be able to depend on is
Mhm.
essentially, that man threw her under the bus to that investigator.
I agree
He
with
threw
you.
her under the bus.
Mhm.
And to now turn around and be like, oh, I got to put the fist in the air and fight on behalf of justice for Beata. Where was justice for Beata when this investigator was in your house?
Well, you have to also remember Beata even states in her letter to the judge that not only was, her family ruined, her finances, but she does mention her marriage was ruined. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if at this point too that things weren't the reason why he wasn't, right there with Beata is because they weren't on the same page and they weren't seeing eye to eye and they weren't communicating and stuff like that. So,
I feel like, and to your point, I feel like to go even a layer deeper, a little further back, I feel like the problem in the marriage was caused by the fact that she felt like she was alone in
Yeah,
that.
I can see that.
I
Yeah.
feel like when she wrote that part in the letter, I was like, okay, which is why I'm reacting the way that I'm reacting,
Hmm.
because that let me know that she's feeling what I saw.
Yeah.
She felt alone, like she really
Hmm.
felt like, eat, child, going to toe to war for your child, and then you coming home and your significant other is telling you essentially you need to shut the hell up, and do what the state says, just because the state is the state. Like, child,
Hmm.
I don't know. Let me shut
Yeah.
my mouth. I'm sorry.
um so Greg Anderson, the Kowalski's attorney, said that though Beata was a nurse and not a lawyer, she was still somehow knew that what the hospital was doing was wrong because, as we've been saying all this time, she documented everything, every email, every writing, every phone call, and all that documentation is the only reason they are able to sue. They then show, during this time, they're showing a montage of all of Beata's notes. I mean, there are so many. I mean, from very detailed to just a few words here and there about what was going on at that point, like very detailed. He said when they came in, when families tend to come in with a falsehood, they have or no, I'm sorry, when the other side, when the hospital comes in and tries to tell him a falsehood, they have the truth due to her documentation. Jennifer Anderson, another attorney for the Kowalski, said after hearing the phone calls, she completely understood Beata's frustrations as a mother. It was like a pressure cooker. She could feel it building up. They show an example of this in a recording that Beata has where she tells, first of all, she actually tells the person, I'm recording this. Is that okay? And they said, yes, that's okay. She then asked about a test that was supposed to be ordered and asked the caller if it was done. The caller said, yeah, I don't see that being ordered. Beata then tells her, okay, so the first one was Namenda. Look, I don't know these words. And then you hear her trying to talk about a second one. And then we hear later Beata saying, he left you a message and I know he did. And then he sent you an email later. The judge allowed her to have her phone. It's in the court order. So I guess this is during the time where Maya is supposed to be able to have access to a phone, but for some reason she wasn't. Um, and she's interrupted by the person who just immediately is like, all right, Beata, please stop recording me. So this is what they're referring to when they say they can hear the frustration in Beata when she's speaking to these people, because every time she's asking these questions over and over again, and they're just finally like, stop, leave me alone, just stop. So Greg says most families give up not because they want to, but because they are taking on a huge corporation and the state, and that they don't have the ability, the funds, or the fortitude to fight back. So they enter into a case plan. So one of the previous parents, Carly Bryan, said that her attorney advised that it'd be safest and quickest to take the case plan. A case plan is where a parent chooses to go along with whatever the state requires of them, a checklist, if you will, to get their child back, such as anger management classes or couples counseling. John Stewart states, it's just simpler to go through the case plan, even if you are innocent. Gregory Anderson, the Kowalski's attorney, states that if you go ahead and sign the case plan, you then release the hospital from liability. Well, the Kowalskis refused the case plan. Jack states that Beata wasn't going to do that because she knew she was right and she was going to fight. Jennifer Anderson, the other attorney for the Kowalski, states that she doesn't know if they were looking that far ahead, but she does know that by not taking the case plan, it set them apart from all the other families. Greg said that if she hadn't taken such an aggressive approach, they wouldn't be able to sue. So they're going after the hospital, Dr. Sally Smith and Suncoast, based on what's known as infliction of emotional distress, meaning that they knew that what they were doing pushing her towards some form of harm. So they should pay punitive damages, which is designed to punish them for their wrongdoing. Viviana says Maya represents hope for all of them in bringing Sally Smith and the whole system down. Jennifer, the Kowalski's attorney, states they want the hospital and Dr. Smith to actually hear them. And then Maya states she wants people to see that she wasn't lying and that other families in similar situations wasn't lying either. She has CRPS. Her mom was not making her sick. At this time, the Kowalskis are shown as going through many depositions in 2020 and in 2021. The documentary is actually being filmed in 2022. So during one, a lawyer asked Jack if they looked for a second opinion for the ketamine coma procedure, to which he states that he is unaware if they did. Unfortunately, the person that would know the answer is dead. During one of Maya's deposition, the lawyer notes that she indicated in her affidavit that and I quote, she refuses to go to doctors or hospitals. And then he asked her why she refuses to go to doctors and hospital. And Maya states, and probably what is one of the most emotional parts of the documentary, she states, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. The last time I was in a hospital, I was medically abducted for 3 months. I just can't go to doctors. I hate going to doctors. I hate going to hospitals. Jack states in his deposition at this time, he says, next time you do a depo on my daughter, could you use a different tactic? She takes it hard, and you got to be careful, especially with a young child. So then we switch back to Maya's deposition, and she's very visibly upset. She's crying, and then she finally says, I remember hearing the nurses talk about me. She's a liar. She's a liar. Don't believe anything she said. She's not in pain. That's what they said to me. That's what they would say to people. You have no clue how traumatic that was for me. You have the audacity to ask me why I'm afraid of hospitals. Are you insane? Are you insane? My mom died and I will never get to see her again, ever. I have to go to school and girls talk about how they went on shopping trips with their mom, how they get to, have little things. You know how hard it is for me to sit and listen to that? Are you serious? You traumatized me. So I know it's so emotional. You have
Crazy,
to
crazy.
watch the documentary at this point to see her say these words, because she's very
Yeah,
emotional. She's crying,
yeah.
and that last line where she says "you traumatized me," she yells it at them, and it's just
Because she is a very even keeled child. And she was very calm. She was emotional as a kid would be when she would talk to her mom and stuff, and any kid would be emotional. I remember if my mother went on a weekend trip when I was a kid, and she would call, "Your boy was over here. Yeah, I'm doing good. I played today." Like I would be like on the verge of tears, and I just saw this lady yesterday afternoon. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
I would just be so upset that she was gone for the weekend. Um, so I can only imagine how this girl is feeling. When you have been, when they have played on your time for this long, and you've been vindicated. Your disease has been proven to be exactly what the hell y'all said it was from the beginning, and you feel like not only did these people hold you hostage in that hospital for that long based on a diagnosis that they didn't understand, they were really mean, they were really rude, they were really dismissive of you and your family, and it resulted in your mother feeling like she had to leave this earth in order to help you.
Yeah.
And it all could have been prevented if y'all just took a beat.
Hmm.
Just took a beat. And this goes back to the conversation you and I had on empathy a couple episodes back. If you just take a beat, just take a minute, let your ego go and really, really analyze what's in front of you, yeah, this girl still may have her mother if that
Yeah.
was the case.
Hmm. I don't really understand why they didn't try to get her to another specialist sooner. Like it took
They
her
didn't
mother.
believe her.
But I'm saying, like, why the courts, if even if they didn't believe her, why the courts, if they're having one doctor say one thing and another doctor say another thing, why didn't the court say, you
Hmm.
know what, we're going to send her to a different specialist outside of you guys, like they did when Beata finally passed. And whatever he says, we'll be able to then decide better, like, which way we want to go instead of just taking Dr. Sally
Yeah.
Smith's word the whole time. Because, Dr. Kirkpatrick, there wasn't anything wrong with him. Like his word, he was a doctor as well, and he's telling you that this is real, and he has his evidence to back it up. So I just think I don't understand why the courts didn't try to find another specialist sooner to kind of do a
Yeah.
tiebreaker almost.
I think it's two pronged. I think the first reason was that Dr. Smith was in the state's circle.
Yeah.
She was part of the club. And I think the other part is that Dr. Fitzpatrick, if I'm remembering correctly, was one of the ones that was on the forefront of discovering the disease.
Hmm.
He was kind of like the guy
Yeah.
for what it was, and he was discovering a lot of things. He was doing a lot of research. He was taking the research that was done elsewhere. It wasn't really a known thing, and his way of treating it was very experimental in the beginning. And doctors like a lot of research. They like a lot of you know
Yeah.
uh, evidence to back up that the treatments that he was prescribing to people were safe, that they were working. And then it's just like any drug they put on the market, like them shits be tested for, well, a lot of them, but as we learned,
Hmm.
a lot of them don't go through that long of testing. But it is years and years usually of testing, trial and error, and denials until they eventually get approved. So I think the doctors were coming from that standpoint. So I honestly think the judge and the doctors were looking at Dr. Fitzpatrick as if he was like a medicine man kind of character. Like they weren't really going for what he, I don't want to say was selling, but because even I in the beginning of the documentary was like, is Dr. Fitzpatrick diagnosing this girl with this stuff just to further his, not agenda but research? Is he misdiagnosing these girls so he can really solidify his field of research? But for it to be backed up like that, it's just, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like when some kids get mono, like that shit gets misdiagnosed, or like Lyme disease or different things like that. Sometimes it can take a long time to get that type of stuff diagnosed because the symptoms are so strange.
Yeah. Yeah. So at this point, we're in April of 2022. Uh, the Kowalski's attorneys are talking about how they are now in the final stages of preparation for trial. So during their preparations, the attorneys started to dig into the codes that Johns Hopkins used to bill insurance companies and found they billed them for 3 months for treatments for CRPS. This was the exact same illness that Sally Smith was telling them, the courts, that Maya did not have and that her parents had made up. And some of the amounts that were shown, some of the amounts that were shown were like $28,000, $12,000, $7,000, 38,000, 9,000, 50,000. I think all in all, it ended up costing, you know, insurance companies or whatever, $500,000 is what they ended up charging for those 3 months of stay.
Let me tell you something, which is why I was going in on them doctors. I understand y'all are humans, but at the end of the day, somebody is putting, because like I said earlier, we were gonna reference this, the fuckery that the hospital was involved in, and it starts from somewhere. The hospital won't just charging this willy nilly. Them doctors they had to have known or had to have played a role in this somewhere, and it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that them. I don't know if the doctors weren't investigated, but if they weren't, they should be, because this is evidence of conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that medicine go? If it's not conspiracy, it's at least insurance fraud. Where did it originate?
Yeah. Greg believes this may be why the other side has been fighting tooth and nail to play keep away from the jury, because they will have a hard time explaining that. They also just found out that the hospital hired a former judge from the second district court of appeals that sits above their trial court. So Johns Hopkins will have incredible, powerful legal representation. They are meant to pick a jury on April 4th, 2022. And then they will be able to go, um, then they will be able to go to trial. So 3 days before the jury selection, Greg calls the Kowalskis with an update. He tells them that the day prior, they got an order telling them they could go to trial. But then around 1:30 in the same afternoon, they got the second order from the Second District Court of Appeals to say the trial will not be going they would not be going to trial Monday as they had planned. You can tell that Maya's visibly upset. Jack and Greg are both trying to comfort her, telling her that they will get him, that it's just a little bit more time, to which Maya states that's what they've been telling them for many years. Greg tells Maya they don't have a case at trial because they are fighting so hard to keep them out of the courtroom. The last thing they want on the planet is seeing the three Kowalskis on that witness stand telling their story. A statement then appears on screen saying, after 4 years of waiting for their day in court, the Second District Court of Appeals has postponed the trial pending their decision to allow punitive damages in the case. Kyle states that after everything, he doesn't want his family to go through the rest of their lives knowing that someone then asks him knowing what, to which he replies that we lost. The reporter Daphne Chen states that even when things are dropped against family and everything, damage has already been done. Kids are traumatized, parents' reputations are ruined. Ashley Finnegan states that even though her charges were dropped, she was found with no wrongdoing. She still had people messaging her that she should kill herself, that her children deserve to be in foster care, and that they hope she never got them back. Carly Bryan said people tried to divide her and the father of her child, wanting them to argue and blame each other. She said she lost a lot of friends. She lost her home, her job, and her daughter. But she says that now that her daughter is home, she's learned to not think about it. And Vivian said her family went into debt and almost had to file for bankruptcy. John Stewart said he spent over 300 days in jail before they finally dropped the charges. His life was ruined because of it. Vivian also says that since 2016, which is when her ordeal took place, she had been writing Sally Smith a Christmas card with her family picture on it. So she was reminded of a family that she tried to break apart but didn't. She said she wrote her back one year, which she was surprised about, and this is what she said. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Graham, I received your card again and just wanted to say I'm sorry you're still so angry about my part in the investigation regarding your son. There are definitely a disturbing number of abuse and neglect children in Pinellas County. I understand you feel very strongly that your son wasn't one of them. You mentioned in your note that Tristan was found to have another diagnosis, and if you have a chance, I would very much like to hear what that was so I can consider it appropriately next time. I try very hard to be thorough and get it right, but perhaps I need to be careful to consider the gray areas. In response to that, Vivian said, if there are gray areas, it's just based on her opinion, which I thought was like the epitome of petty. The fact that she keeps writing this woman every year. I think all the people should just write this woman every year and let her know what families she didn't destroy. So on April 5th, 2022, the Kowalskis are granted a hearing to make a final plea for the trial to continue. Jack states if their plea is denied, it would probably be another year of them living with this, and his family just needs to get off this horrible ride. Maya says she hopes to read a statement that she had written the night prior in the court, and she hopes that the court will finally hear her for once. She wants them to know her mom was a good person. She wants them to know how strong she was and how determined she was. She states she believes she is primarily going there for her. During the hearing, Judge Hunter Carroll says that he moved 2,000 cases to make the trial happen, but they are now getting past the window of opportunity to start the case, and that's just where he's at. The Kowalski's attorney states that he understands this and that he is able to cut the case down to the bare minimum to get the case done. But the judge then asks, how do you get around the Second District Court of Appeals having stayed the trial? He can't do jury selection, but not the trial. Greg responds that he doesn't see any limitations in the court's jurisdiction to pick a jury, and he will do absolutely anything that's necessary to get the case tried within the requisite period. The judge then asked John Hopkins' lawyer, Chris Altenberg, if he had a response, to which he says that he doesn't see how it's feasible. Judge Carroll feels there is too much uncertainty, so he would be moving the case from the docket. He says he will enter an order staying the proceedings in the trial court until the earlier of May 4th, 2022, so about a month later, or further order of the court. He then asks if anything else needs to be addressed. Greg states that the Kowalskis were in attendance and that Maya would like to read a statement. The judge says it's a little unusual and then asks Howard Hunter, another attorney for the hospital, his thoughts. Howard Hunter says, Judge, I don't know where this is going. I don't think it's a good idea. The judge agrees and says he thinks it's best to leave it at that. So the Kowalskis, especially Maya and Kyle, are devastated. Kyle can be heard sobbing, it's never going to end and it's not fair. A statement then appears saying the judge confirmed the trial will be pushed indefinitely until the Second District Court of Appeals decides whether punitive damages can be included in the lawsuit. And this is where we start to get to the end of the documentary. Jack states, as crushing as everything is, if they gave up, it would happen again and it would just be a matter of time. Reporter Daphne Chen states this doesn't just end with the Kowalskis or even in Florida. This type of situation is happening across the country, with some families battling the legal system for years while some are stuck in prison till this day from it. Maya states she wants to speak, but she can't without crying, and that she hates crying. And then in an eerie recording of Beata, they kind of play it as a response to what she just said, and she's telling Maya during one of their phone conversations that it's okay to cry, it's normal, you have to speak for yourself now because mommy is not there. Just close your eyes and pretend I'm there. I know it's not the same, but just be strong. Maya then reads a letter she wrote for her mother. She writes, Dear Mom, saying that life has felt fucked up since you left is probably the biggest understatement I could make. Dad, Kyle, and I have all had to adapt to your absence. Dad distracts himself by helping the neighbors with painting projects. Kyle does his best to escape by fishing for hours. When pouring all my energy into my schoolwork got to be too exhausting, I started to book every second of my free time with friends, outside of the house and away from reminders. But as soon as we step foot into our home, we are brought back to reality. We miss you. I miss you. For 5 years, we have been promised our trial, yet it seems that the closer we get to a set date, the further it gets pushed. Even though we are discouraged, we will not settle. We will fight for you, and we will fight for thousands of other families who find themselves in the same unfortunate circumstances. Our day will come. I love you. And then at this point, the ending statements say that on October 7th, 2022, the Second District Court of Appeals approved the Kowalskis' request to pursue punitive damages. A trial date had then been set for September 11th, 2023. At that time, it will have been 2,530 days since Maya entered the hospital, which is almost 7 years. In December 2021, Dr. Sally Smith and the Suncoast Center settled their portion of the lawsuit with the Kowalskis. Sally Smith declined to be interviewed for the film. The hospital has issued the following statement. Our primary priority at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital is always the safety and privacy of our patients and their families. Therefore, we strictly follow privacy laws that limit the amount of information we can release regarding any particular case. Our first responsibility is always the child brought to us for care, and we are legally obligated to notify the Department of Child and Families, DCF, when we detect signs of possible abuse or neglect. It is DCF that investigates the situation and makes the ultimate decision about what course of action is in the best interests of the child. Judge Lee E. Haworth issued the following statement. He's the judge that denied Beata her hug. At all times, decisions regarding family contact between Maya and her family were based on the testimony and strong recommendations of a well-credentialed physician and hospital employees who, at the time, presented as experts in their respective fields. A judge's decisions can only be as good as the information he or she has provided and must be based on the quality of evidence that appears trustworthy. It was in this case. So, the Kowalski family is one of many during the course of filmmaking over the past 4 years. The filmmakers connected with more than 100 families affected by allegations of child abuse from different doctors and hospitals across the country. So obviously this is something that is very much a thing that's been going on. But that is the documentary of Take Care of Maya. You're more than welcome to go on Netflix to watch it. I highly recommend it. I will say that, as you guys have probably figured out, Maya's case is currently going on in the courtroom at the moment. They estimate that her case will take about 2 months to complete. So, she and her family are suing the hospital for $200 million, $55 million in compensatory damages, and $165 million in punitive damages. Like they've said before, they settled with Dr. Sally Smith and Suncoast. I believe it was for like $2.1 million. They were just told that they did drop their case against Catherine Beatty, but it was a strategic move that was the reason why they did it, not because they felt like she didn't do any wrongdoing or anything like that. They did it as a walkaway. But so far, not a lot has been coming out about the case. We've only had really bits and pieces of opening statements. Anderson told juries Maya Kowalski was falsely imprisoned and battered. She was denied communications with her family, and she was denied communication with the outside. She was told that her mother was crazy. She was told by social workers, one in particular, that she would be her mother. Maya was repeatedly battered by nurses and social workers trying to prove that she did not have CRPS. The defendants, continued to accuse the Kowalskis, Jack and Beata, of being child abusers, even after evidence was overwhelming that that Maya did have CRPS. Howard Hunter said doctors did their best to treat a difficult case in which a child appeared to be in extreme pain. Her leg muscle atrophied after months in a wheelchair. He states she was demanding pain medication in large quantities. He said Mrs. Kowalski arrived a while later, and you're going to hear that when she arrived, she forbade the doctors and the nurses to touch Maya. The doctors and nurses wanted to assess her and to examine her. Mrs. Kowalski insisted that before there be any work up of the child, she wanted ketamine, and not just any amount of ketamine. It is not approved for use in children, nor is it approved for use in high doses for treatment in CRPS. That dose you're going to hear is many times the maximum dose for children. So, that is the update we have, and that's where the case is at this moment. I will let you know that once the case is over, we'll do an episode where we revisit this so you guys can hear the complete outcome of everything. But I will say, I have only one thing to say about the opening statements, I'm actually surprised by the hospital, Howard Hunter, his opening statements, that he would bring up the fact that Mrs. Kowalski was refusing to have them touch or treat Maya until she had ketamine in her, because I feel like that just works. That just shows, you know, the reason why she was saying that was because if Maya was touched in any way or was hurt or was yeah, if Maya was touched in any way, she was physically hurt. Like, you got to remember, CRPS, if you touch her lightly, it's physically painful. So I think that's going to work against him in the long run.
I think that yeah, to that point, I think the lawyer is from the statement he gave is seeming like he's kind of building his case around the fact that CRPS isn't established enough as a disease to warrant a doctor at that time knowing that ketamine was a suitable treatment, because it's probably still not proven with enough research yet that it is suitable in those quantities for a child that young. Um, so I think that's where he's going with that statement. Um, I think it does work in favor of the plaintiff's case, because that's probably what they're building their case on, the fact that the hospital didn't know, um and them being so nonchalant about it led to the negligence, which led to Beata's death. But I think the hospital's attorney is going to build his case around the fact that there was nothing established at the time to warrant the hospital acting in any other way. So essentially, he's admitting negligence by ignorance to me. He's saying they weren't negligent because they didn't know. You
Right.
know, so it's an insane argument. It's infuriating, but I can actually see him winning that case with that argument, because if it's not established medicine, if the doctors don't have anything to look at other than Dr. Fitzpatrick and his research, then what, where can these doctors really go from here, even though they ended up being wrong with the information that they had at that time and the treatments that were available to them and how they know ketamine affects children of her age. I can see the hospital winning this case.
Well, we'll find out. Like they said,
Yeah.
it's going to take about 2 months. So we'll see.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
We'll be keeping an eye on it.
yeah, so that's the case of the Netflix documentary Take Care of Maya.
Yes, Crystal. Thank you for putting that together for us. Thank you for laying it out for the folks. Folks, if you let me tell you something. If you didn't watch the documentary, baby, you don't need to watch it. Okay, because Crystal did the leg work for you. She has laid this thing out in a way that is um so digestible, so well laid out and delivered to you all through your ear canals. It was a joy. We would love to hear what you all have to say about the story. I know there's a lot of crazy things in here. It is so much to comment on. We really wanted to kind of streamline this episode, and not really uh, slow down the process of getting the story to you in this episode. So we will do most of our conversation and reaction, at least on my part, in the comment section. So if you have something to say, if you have an opinion, I would love to hear it. And I would love to have the discussion with you in the comment section, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram or on our Facebook page. Speaking of which, if you want to find us at those places, please catch us on YouTube. Make sure you search T and Crystal's podcast. Go down there, like, subscribe, leave a comment, We will kiki chit chat with you down there in the comment section. Go find us on TikTok. Crystal will have all the conversation that you want to have over on the TikTok at T and Crystal's podcast. Find us on Facebook. We post, weekly um, sneak peeks for each of the episodes. We also post segments from each of the episodes following the episodes. Please leave a comment on those, leave a like, your reaction, and we will interact with you on there as well. Um, and we do post when episodes drop on YouTube. So if you have a reaction from YouTube and you just want to leave it on Facebook for everybody to see, leave it over there, and we will talk to you over there about it as well. Go over on our Instagram. Our Instagram is full of reels that show different clips from the show. We love to interact with you all over there. If you want to leave an anonymous message, go over to our pinned stories. We have a anonymous message portal where you can leave a message for us. We will read it, and we will read it on the show and react to it if you want to tell us our business without us knowing who you are. If you want to tell us your business otherwise, please send us an email if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Comments and concerns you can keep to yourself. But if you have any questions, if you want us to get into your business and give you horrible advice, my favorite thing to do, please send that over to T and Crystal at gmail.com. That's TEANDCRYSTAL at gmail.com. Make sure that it is anonymous, because I don't want to tell your business. But if you leave your name in there, or if you have an email that is identifying, I will. Crystal, do you have anything to say to the people before we get the hell up out of here?
Thank you guys so much for joining us on. Oh, my voice, you could hear it. I talk too much.
Child, you've been working. You've been working.
If we thank you guys for sticking with us on this long little journey that we just took with this case, I
Mhm.
do highly suggest you still check out the documentary if you haven't.
Oh yeah.
But if nothing else, thank you for being here, and we hope you enjoyed this little recap we did. So,
Mm-hmm. All right, y'all. Until
bye.
next time. Bye, y'all.